Hello this day. Like Ishane timeless, asphalt of the thing. For I am you, be me, together Romulus sing. Ahem da da da. Raps everything. Auza Bella, Bismillah. Like shut the statutes up. Let this timeless one spring. Wind swept it all back. Fall back to the sea. Click clack in Iraq, Iran, follow me. For I am you, be me, together Romulus sing. The industry together builds. The animate thing. Auza Bella, Bismillah, I use a rap. For example, in other words, here's a narrative. In other words, and monetize negative value nature, turn negatives into positive together. The way now let be tried to forsaken peace, not peace in relationship to terror natures. It's too many at once for nations to speak about honestly with us, with the proper facts treatments with us, because of time and positions, for the nature of having hundreds of nations, also having been had only let realized to denatured landscapes and worlds and internation correlation nature, forced internation relations as an engineering of indifferences, perpetually incapable of seeing the exploitations and the motivations for evil with our top-down roles with predatory litigation nature. In other words, we have common enemy. For example, that's why there's so much hurt for millions in America with our streets. Iraq, I know you guys have the same thing, but with different logistical position, nothing grows there. In these pictures, no one puts that not by accident, because we have only let realized, forged by terror, forged. In other words, the founders of our country, our revolution was in relationship to England. It was in relationship to impositions against free speech, against religion, which we have a common enemy, which is animate not from one nation, but live evidence with exploitations of murderous exploitations, mass of only let realized top down predatory offensive litigation nature called incomplete legal nature explanations. I'm not even a lawyer. In other words, in relationship, when we're talking about law, when we're talking about religions, and the sciences are kept together since semi-ancient times. This just reminds they denature humanity by denaturing human convictions, criminally re-engineering ancient revelations with criminal insidiousness narratives not even still left, even though we have the proofs of it, because we have natures of agencies and roles in natures like this. They can't charge that without charging their own what they are, not by accident. And everyone not let to see this. Everyone only to let realize train to indifferences, and not realizing what stayed since before that to terrorize anyone who wants to ratiocinate against what is multi-front with a method to put everyone who's just not going to push away, points of correlation that reveal criminal insidiousness narratives, force glorified with American history, and so the methods to obfuscate justifications of that offensively are offensive predatory litigation, weapons of evil, and with self-justifications telling lies as only let glorified and trained through the sciences, not by accident. In other words, that's how we lost the war on poverty. That's how the sciences failed. and not of a nature capable of understanding the problems in Iraq before the second. No, even to talk about this, even before the second Iraq war. That's why they had the big food companies, everything. And I'm not saying to attack them, because that's tied to all kinds of people's employments and investments and stuff like that. And the system's stuck this way. So the only thing to do it is to lock it down and don't let it get any worse, and see what's making it do that. In other words, that's reality. But what was before and with colonization was a terror method that was consciously denaturing the landscape and leaving us fit, like only let realize this nature. Landscape theory, for what? In other words, that's what forced everyone to the shared markets positions, not for money, but for a method, engineering, a mass engineering indifference. In other words, with human convictions. So, with human conviction nature, evidence fabrication nature, every nation. So that's only through the sciences, which were geopolitical, interscience, organized crime, before the nations with the evil statutes. In other words, the top-down sophistications were only let with criminal roles. They didn't understand the relationship to terrorists. They didn't understand reaction natures, the lockdown foundations that were never, with anyone ever realized how to explain. So they just explained the surface natures in relationship to terrorism, wars, and called the opposite peace. And the opposite is maintained, measured as evidence fabrication nature. For example, Iraq. When they say shock and awe, the awes, that was for the same enemy we have, but it's not sourced by one nation. There's proofs of this. In other words, with colonization, when they had terror laws, that wasn't white people, that was a very few ancient internation science, intercultural police forms who came up with a way to hide what they were going to do. In other words, to have it perpetually blamed on other lies and delusions, perpetually juxtaposed with other people's needs to tell the same lies and to commit the same crimes as wrongdoers, as predicate act criminals, and as associate criminals in relationship to juxtapositions of criminal enterprises with only realized, criminally legalized criminal enterprise nations. This is what no, this is Algebraic. Still, every nation shares what, but not just Algebraic. What is to the maintenance of the sabotage of reason in relationship to it. See, this is why the Quran values the unbeliever who has the right nature and is not associated with internation. Methods of terror with motivations for that cultivate needs for life progressions. That what I just said juxtaposed to other excuses and other actual crimes, but then not leave. In other words, criminal insidious, more and more criminal insidiousness natures and needs as a negative value nature progression in relationship to what people don't understand, because wrongdoers aren't associates of criminal enterprises, and which is an organized crime body. And so what this method did with colonization, it was a juxtaposition of organized crime. So let's take for 9/11, for example. That was a juxtaposition of criminal of predicate acts, murder, against each one of the people in there, and but it was a juxtaposition of policing natures with, for example, uncharged witness fabrications and evidence fabrication rules. In context, they know they'll never be charging because they're all needing and defending lies they have to tell us together. And this is a method that that stays nations with predatory sciences, with sciences delusion propagating, with evidence fabrication rules, with hurt and difference rules, with weaponized hurt conviction natures, indifference to and unbelieving of all the evil that is active every day with mass incarceration in our nations, and what is actively to the exploitation, consciously, willfully, to the maintenance of sabotaged educations for this. Had nothing to do with money. Never did. In other words, this method knew that by putting us, nature demonstrates when you're positive value nature always, then you're positive value nature. And it demonstrates by causing we connect with a nature that is greater than ours when we are positive always, and it causes to be realized positive value nature progressions that weren't there before. Evolution. See, now sciences teach what causes evolution, but we have sciences that are maintained not only for their own interests, juxtaposed. Everyone's only realized to attract all nations. This is what religions are about. This is why Islam, the messenger Hamdallah says, I'm the last prophet. In other words, these are the messengers of other religions before them. That's why he's respecting them too. Excuse me. It's the Quran's about. In other words, it's about one thing we know it's about is al-jahaliyyah. In other words, human education, the sciences were taken criminal. I read somewhere that the geopolitical sciences, intercultural sciences, they knew the world was round, but they were telling the world was flat. In other words, those are predicate acts. Those are worse than war crimes. Those are crimes against humanity. But with only people that realized, as the people with the litigation abilities, you see. So we have terror prisons and methods, terror with that, and with medicine, still, like, not as overtly sick as the stuff with Joseph Mengele, but even to that extent, where people dying on the drugs in these places, being used for evidence fabrication, and tied to courts with the same actors. In other words, and to prisons with database relationships. Colonization was a juxtaposition of criminal enterprises with also using a common database terror relationship, but having it measured, cultivated, only realized, blamed on other things. That's why the nature of it was so evil, to have pigment and any difference exploited for natures of evidence fabrication, excuses, lies. They have to be told to justify narratives all at once, per an engineering of differences measured and studied to be, in other words, perfected. Not only how to maintain it like that too. So in other words, we don't have natural opinion natures. We still have terror influences, not only on our own opinion natures, but on the opinion natures of our legal natures through the way they're only realized. I'm not even a lawyer. Thank God, because then I'd be following rules, and I would already have self-defending treatments of facts treatments and morality treatments that would make me incapable of speaking for the forsaken nature of peace that is necessary, the forsaken nature of law that is necessary to be revealed. In other words, by the sciences. This is what religions pray for, is us to understand ourselves. In other words, as one body. What is positive that makes everybody progressive value to ourselves. In other words, not just to be happy, to be content, but to be progressively content. And this is what this is when we realize this. So, in other words, we do that. We make it. The education is owned by the people who need it first here. In other words, with the cartoon, this is the means, and now it's a game. Because why is it? It's not a game. It's not a game, but it's the victory. The victory is when we're working for the same positive identity. Then it has means to build not a hanging garden, but an evolving garden. Not a hanging garden by two rods. Like we have very sophisticated linguistic. In other words, the lies. We have dishonesty and motivations for great evil with our top-down litigation natures. I only let realize legal natures. For example, in relationship to the war on poverty, how we lost it. These are in relationship to hard facts that are still terrorized. That's the only reason they haven't been let to have ratiocination. In relationship to the way everyone's invested. In the relationship to how only let people that are making opinion natures are with natures of terror in it standardized. But in other words, and multi-front claiming, with systematic evidence fabrications, that people don't realize. They don't realize that with the nature of methods that have people know what that we're not going to mention. They're consciously creating polarity and maintaining polarities, not just between areas and towns, while staying facilitations as roles to the maintenance of breaching evil maintenance, lie progressions, perpetually having them maintain juxtaposed on other natures of crime. In other words, other needs to tell the same lies, and on other actors, even framed ones too sometimes, and constantly per nature of the treatments of it, making things worse than it is. They are, and making things, even when they make it, they even make it that weren't at all. In nature of the way the courts are communicating with defendants, and the relationship to systematic evidence fabrication problems, relationship to time and position problems with terrorists too. That's why we still have uncharged 9/11 predicate acts still being actively connected to motivations with all the people connected to that directly and indirectly, still actively to the exploitation of all ages of innocence. So, we can speak our souls and let it, in other words, that's what we have to do in Iraq, in Yemen, and in Saudi Arabia. I'm always going to be on Saudi Arabia's side because I understand what the Quran's saying. In other words, the body of Saudi Arabia has hundreds of impositions, just like America too. You know what I mean? And in Iraq, we always, we're stuck in this together. We have the same common enemy, and no one understands it. And that's why we have our legal natures, predatory litigation natures, self-defense natures, as victims too. Everybody's a victim to what is not sourced by one nation. Anyways, I leave back to that fact. We make the education only, because the landscape has nothing and no food. And this is with nature's, we have to feel, we have to have, this is what forgiveness is for, too. In other words, we have to have a complex litigation. We have to be able to force these guys to engagement. We don't even know their names yet. who came up with this term, shock and awe. It wasn't American, I bet. If it was the ones like tied to Robert Luskin. There are recorded proofs, even not directly to him, but in other words, in the nature of it, in relationship to related witness fabrications for 9/11 and evidence fabrications and forged conversations that weren't at all, pretending categorically lies to block what people had to tell about too, if they want to, the witnesses that they pretended they communicated with about these things. In other words, and with related sequence shifting, post-dating of documents having been proven in the federal courtroom in 9/11 that day, tied to the co-defendants of a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, co-defendants of his, one of them who had a daughter in my grade, involved with the people with that, with attaching me to fake conversations with them. I don't even know me. Just they knew they were in my school, and they sequentially had people make confessions to me, and then go with the polarity games. In other words, with 10 faces, these are evidence fabrication methods that everyone missed, doesn't understand. When they say the police, they hold the police as a topic and with terror, the topic of police, when and while we know it's been juxtaposed by forced origin, was inherited, still entrenched, stuck low, interscience, organized breaching, organized crime methods. If we understand American history, but we lost to all that's connected to this. Not understanding our enemies, in other words, the proofs of it are glorifications of of criminal insidiousness, need type glorifications of forced theater of James Madison, of our founders. In other words, they didn't have free speech. Marbury versus Madison, he had to just drop that off. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. See, he had to say appearances, but the rest of the Constitution implies and demonstrates it has to be, in other words, real. In other words, you have to. If it's not real justice, always it's not real justice. It's negative value nature, and staying negative value nature and staying justifications of that. We can't see what's with the engineering of indifferences, because that can't protract reason. That can't protract correlation, which involves nature inherent to consciousness, because overall consciousness is going to stay positive, because that's unchanging, and nature inherent to consciousness is active value in relationship to that correlation and relationship to all other physical values actively. In other words, even the Constitution, which right is the most important? It's actively different in relationship to each person, and each time they're in a different spot. If you're driving on the road, the laws are most important are that the people next to you are following, that you're following the rules so you don't hurt anyone else. And so you can adapt if there's unforeseen things, which there are. It's more probable than the lottery is something going to happen with a car, and with the cars of nations, with the lies and delusions as evidence fabrication natures, and how, as hurt conviction natures, as an engineering of indifferences, relying upon the same methods of justifying that, and with methods, obtaining those methods upheld, blamed on other criminal needs. But these are in relationship to natures of organized crime we're not having, because we're not laying fact treatments that are honest enough. While there are a lot evidence fabrication natures, hurt conviction natures, indifferent natures offensively, predatory litigation natures, claiming to be the honest litigation nature, honest constitutional value, honest free speech value, honest religious value. That's why they attack Radical Islam. They let when the Quran warns about this. See, this is because the Quran says that people are going to say they're Muslims always, but they're not. In other words, the Quran knows that human education was criminally de-engineered. So the Quran knows that people are going to attach convictions to the perception of its words that are, even if they believe it or not. In other words, in relationship to people are interpreting these business value nature systems. See, this is where you can still have differences against Saudi Arabia, because the beginning of in other words, against its nature of extortion. But you have to do it not in relationship to it, in relationship to, in other words, as to free the identity that is common to everybody, and that is the common value of the earth, because the earth has no criminal persuasions. So the earth is a valuable diffusion, is of a progressive value with what is unchanging value, which is Allah, unchanging positive. And so unchanging positive is not just with the finite inherent to consciousness, but is what is with all, but not in the order of in other words, as all. We're like inside the body of unchanging value, but it's like unchanging value is diffusing through one spot, Earth, in zero gravity. And when we are with no criminal persuasions, then our honesty, in other words, in relationship three ways, then we're really trying to be value to ourselves as men, as women, and as a species, and regardless of, in other words, human rights. See, now here's another thing, like, in other words, everyone deserves rights. But see, especially in this context, if you want to say, gay rights or color rights, now you're forcing typethink, and you're asking for it to be unchallenged. And it's also with movements that are in relationship to polarity cultivations and maintenances that are with terrors juxtaposed to our schools in known and in further demonstrable ways, uncharged natures of organized crime and predatory litigation natures, blaming this on the victims of who end up with roles with these criminal enterprises juxtaposed with the criminally legalized ones they don't understand. And then it's too late, and then they become needing to be in the maintenance of live progressions. But the most evil ones are intercity, interstate, internation, international, and not by accident, in relationship to needing us, to wanting us to rather blame it on base things like how their international market positions, how they have the employments invested to career positions with it. But this is also the breaching nature roles, evidence fabrication roles, mass evil roles. This is like another gangland, another nature of gang juxtaposed with them, being used for the maintenance of live progressions to our whole area, have breaching needs with live progressions blamed on other things. Like, for example, in relationship to the systemic opium problem, or what is it called? Heroin problem. We wouldn't have a system, we don't have heroin growing here. So we have a breaching influences to all areas. And methods to have that blame, and methods to have that, to the secrecy of that, used to hide the secrecy of live progression methods to terrors against 9/11 context victims, for example, in relationship to them pretending to be the fake 9/11 conversations, and have, with doctors from my town, just because they have family in my school, and they have, where they have the drugs with that too. the drug crimes and other natures of exploitation of all ages of innocence, now they attach me. They won't respond in writing. I also noticed with with the narrative in relationship to the pattern of killers, in relationship to the campuses, too. We recorded proofs of them being used for natures of, which are the recorded proofs of what I'm saying. In other words, in relationship to predatory legal natures, branches of government, but in relationship to how we're sharing international families here through time and what's with all areas. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, his narrative. Everyone attaches lies and delusions about American history, not only in our country, but in other countries. So here's something we can fight. It's like we can fight about to make money for. So in other words, we're not fighting. We're in the field that hurts not one, because we're fighting for the where we are, where I am you and you. Where we are the one. What's positive? The body of the species, body of both sexes, together, all the way through the Trinity, and that's brings value out. Now this is Allah's name is just, I don't know, it was perfect for teaching English. This is not like animating the messenger stuff. This is like animating ourselves into a thing. In other words, communicating. We know one thing, that the landscapes of the world were denatured tactically to force everyone into shared market positions with terror. And with the nature of that, left justified indifferences that are actively to the exploitation of the rights of our nations and especially millions together. For example, between we're going to attach awareness to finite facts and proofs of active exploitations of that are with the active sabotage of the war on poverty, and hiding up how their roles with the sabotage and active exploitations of it in the past. We're going to attach that to a game called Suburban Beggar, for example, because I'm going to show the negative value natures at the same time. In other words, set up by terror colonization laws on the suburbs too, knowing that we're going to blame there are going to be too many time impositions on individuals too, and on groups, and on sexes too, dividing and hurt in relationship to natures of really to the problem with the drugs and also like we used for systemic evidence fabrication natures. Again, on predatory litigation natures only that realized now in relationship to all areas. We have to understand the terror database relationships with colonization and its laws. For example, with color and with indifferences against Native Americans. That was cultivated consciously, willfully, in other words, in relationship to only realized tool legal natures of sophistications only let realize in relationship to contrast to their own people's exploitation as roles with it, and in relationship to only let train to spot to the maintenance of self-justifications of how being trained to spot. In other words, we lost since before revolution because we are the Native American rights. Why? Because we are the body of humanity, no matter where what rights are. So we understand too, when in Iraq, the human body is in relationship to this. These are fields that are not physical, but the physical fields and the time impositions on the bodies of a denatured landscape in Iraq with no food, but through means that are denatured to value nature systems ulterior from the one that is positive all ways. This forcing negative value nature progressions. And there's measuring and using only let realized scientific natures, industry natures of legal natures, predatory litigation natures, roles with exploitations of this, all ages of innocence. We're there and here at the same time. But see, and not by accident, in other words, colonization's terror laws, interculturally, they made everyone only capable of blaming this on other nations and on other cultures and on other religions. No one, everyone with attaching the convictions and the hurt in relationship to hurt and justifications of it, and of glorifications that are only let realized, breached modern nations, per internation science, only let realize breach, and policed like that. And juxtaposed with international criminal enterprise, juxtaposed with shared international investments in banking and systems, value nature systems. And in other words, perpetuating means to have breaching, terror maintenance, lies, and progressions perpetually attached, evidence fabrication methods perpetually, the negative value nature progressions caused by it, to have it perpetually blamed on other things. For example, the Quran would never have survived if Saudi Arabia didn't have those hard rules for the body. In other words, you don't bring pigs into Saudi Arabia. They would have. All these things are time and position, war things, in relationship to hundreds of nations forced to share policing, only let realized to force justifications of incomplete legal nature, and then that glorified. In other words, propagating physical delusions, juxtaposed to the foundations of all modern nations, per what orchestrated this for a means to captivate the human value nature system through time. And so Asia has Asia, Africa, the whole world has problems. I'm saying, especially the denatured landscapes. We have to start. Where there's desert, and they own the education just for the not just for the food to one time, but keep active to build what keeps building the food in a paradise. In other words, not a hanging garden, an evolving garden. And we know how to call this evolution is to be unchanging, positive always. So in this cartoon, we're fighting about not the only way. There's two natures of fighting. You can fight to hurt, or you can fight to free, which is the quest of freedom is nature that's independent. It's an independent nature because it's actively in demonstration to us through correlation. Through correlation through eating, and through correlation to nature of diffusion of, in other words, with the active through matter, as the active relationship of all physical values to nature inherent to consciousness, in relationship to unchanging overall nature of consciousness too, positive. In other words, the nature of consciousness itself needs itself for its own body, no matter which body it's in. And when that is understood, and when that is an agenda, that's an agenda that is progressively can feel good, because it's the only one that's going to be demonstrated connecting with a nature that demonstrates positive value nature progressions. Because it's a might that we can't have without it. Otherwise, our might and our power are negative value nature progressions, and self-defense natures of that, as evidence fabrication natures, as hurt conviction natures, as indifference natures, using shared means to get away with the lies in relationship to them. Not only at surface values, but in relationship to the lies being told on complex litigation desks. In other words, by our lawyers, by our agency's directors. not just reserved to the maintenance of roles with the same criminal enterprises they're prosecuting, because of how the modern nations will only get realized with geopolitical internation terror, forced denatured landscapes, forced denatured human education, forced lost memory, forced roles with the same obtaining the same criminal insidiousness sabotages to ratiocination, to the protraction of correlation, which is in relationship to actively the law that is in the demonstration to each point, each finite thing actively differently to each person. In other words, this is why communication is so important. In other words, this is where this is a value too. We're going to discipline the sciences. We're going to do more than admonish them. This is the change that each nation, each heart wants. Each more than heart. Each identity, each positive identity, every identity is positive. But the nature has to be with correlation too. See, we have top down. We have the overall nature, not let. So that's what I'm going to show you too. With this is, I'm going to show you the difference between physics and metaphysics with the Magnellah, not with value AH. When we are value all three ways, we connect with a larger nature. So, and Allah, in other words, value A, capital value A, is a progressive value to itself, and forever, as a forever and unchanging nature already, as the only unchanging nature of positive already. Value the two L, the first L, value Al. Now see, I never read this, but think about this. Value Al is like the, which is the definite article. In English, there's only one. This is temporary value nature. And regarding, and that's left to right. Regarding Arabic and right to left, in value Al, that means the. And that's the definite article in Arabic. Now this is also space nature's definite article, and the first two letters of written in English of Allah's name. Now, think about this. In temporary space nature, where unchanging positive is coming through it, all that can be it is longing to it, is longing to value A, what is already of progressive value to itself. And as its progressive value, which is the value L, lowercase l. It's the value of an uppercase letter because it's unchanging positive, but the bottom of it is invisible. This is in relationship to how the two parts of the value capital A, the upper part and the lower part, these are our visible space natures. In other words, the sciences were revealed together. So even though it's invisible, through correlation in relationship to what we can learn that, in other words, because diffusion of consciousness is coming through with no criminal persuasions, it's a nature, it's a quality of diffusion. And then we could change that by ignoring nature inherent to it, wherever it is, not just with us. When we ignore it wherever it is, we're ignoring it inherent to us. What motivates this, and knew it would motivate this, was not just how we were force shared the policing. It was how we were tactically, they knew that if they denatured the landscape and put these houses like this, the way they did it, and these designs and made cities and put the water underground and denatured all the, made it so you had to rely on mass markets and invest everyone reliant, stuck with these ways. They knew that everyone would only be able to blame they would cause negative value nature progressions. And the cause of those negative value nature progressions would be perpetually blamed on other things, on other lies, and on other delusions. per method maintaining needed to be per all areas, but per ulterior needs, only that realized per natures of the sciences with roles with this. A breaching method, in other words. And that's what, in other words, they had slavery and color with the laws. They had, even after slavery, and even with women's not being allowed to vote and not being able to understand means for abuses of them, for natures of abuses of all ages of innocence, and all types of innocence and of weakness, for a method of evil that wants and needs us to blame it on things like prejudice, and even affects other ulterior criminal needs for it to be, in other words, in relationship to what actually is all that's facilitating juxtapositions of criminal enterprises with our schools, and with the prisons punishing them since they're kids and since their parents were kids. They failed the war on poverty more because they failed education and because of active exploitations of it in its name, not by accident. So all this has to be, and these are time impositions, and then these are natures of self-defense, the treatments of facts and of laws, voice, that are predatory, as evidence fabrication natures, as hurt conviction natures, and as roles within and differences that need to be explained in relationship to actively different people, and at points, finite points being, not lied about, like uncharged witness fabrications and natures of and motivations with our agencies with roles with that, as self-defense natures with roles with that with other nations' legal natures. So we can't sue because we have to. The only way we can fix ourselves is being able to speak freedom outside of courts. So I didn't read about Sharia law yet, but this is, in other words, I know it's not. The Quran warns against the convictions and treatments of it being justified in relationship to the only narratives they're letting seen, at least on this side. Both sides are for example, going after radical Islam. You're saying there's not religious freedom. You're dividing. You're measuring evidence fabrication natures, predatory, cultivating them with that. In other words, with those convictions, it's not even a fact. It's not even. That's not even. The Quran warns against treatments like that. It's not. They're not treating the parts of the Quran that are controversial properly because they won't let it in sequence. Because if you let it in sequence, common sense is demonstrating about how the sciences are criminally involved. That means that the legal natures, the most sophisticated the agencies, are tool evidence fabrication natures themselves as laws, as hurt, reaction natures as tools in relationship to methods that maintain needs for life progressions to them that are evil, self-defended to all areas. That means voices only let predatory. That's really, criminal insidiousness with the nature of our media, with these treatments. There are proofs too that 9/11 crimes that are active, or recorded proofs of it, being tied to that guy Ken Bowen. If that's the same guy with that name, in relationship to knowledge he has about issues related to the treatments treatments of facts, into breaching lies and motivations with our agencies, with 9/11, but with their motivations having been exploitations of gangland juxtapositions at home, intercampus, intercity, in relationship to exploitations of databases in relationship to proven pension thefts, pension cramp-downs, job site drug dealing, and further known and demonstrable exploitations of all ages of innocence, uncharged and related, charged with, but improperly, incompletely, and in relationship to people at the same time being, it was proven. The thing is, I'm trying to say, if we could admit, if we could understand that there's a forsaken nature of peace that hasn't been let. That's what religions are about together. One thing isn't it about, it's about revealing the garden, the potential, not a hanging garden, an evolving one, evolving one, and that's perfect. And then perfect only gets better. It only evolves. Unchanging positive. Unchanging positive. What is justice always? So I would say, I'm not a lawyer, I would say Marbury versus Madison says, Madison would want us to say, definitely, true justice must be positive always, justice, especially in relationship to morality, and especially in relationship to all the roles with breaching that our branches have only been led to realize. Realize too, they have to search them souls, all of us. You know what I'm saying? That's what when I say in videos, sometimes I watch the guy on YouTube, two different guys. One guy says that he said he want the Native American chief. So I want them to admit what they did to us. He wants us, he said we have to read each other's dreams. And this is in a context where nobody has free speech, per methods to it. And before someone has the right to the ability to say this, we have hurt evidence fabrication natures with too many police forms at once, when they only need one to affect people to play terror roles, attacking. We have to explain overall truths under top-down lies of predatory being forced in relation to evidence fabrication roles with our stewards, that they're in relationship to needs, having already played roles with lie progression cover-ups, breaching nature cover-ups, and no one realizes it. And so no one realizes there's a really evil interbranch legal nature. We have mass serial killer with the natures of colonization, and per methods and motivations with fact treatments, per methods having it blamed on other things. That's why they had such evil as to have color with the laws. That's why they had such evil in relationship to the world wars with the Second World War, and with the world wars with Joseph Mengele doing medical experiments, pulling out Jews to experiment on them. It's not because he was prejudiced against Jews. It's because it's a method, it's an evidence fabrication method, a hurt conviction nature method that hurts to have the world play the roles as our own breaching army and our own perpetual exploitations as I'm about to lose the battery, I have to go. So in other words, I'll prove that American history, that all nations get it wrong. So I'll fight with, and then everyone will fight with me. What's untrue, positive, all changing ways with ideas too. This is what evolves. This is what accumulates with this game. This is how it is evolution. We be the nature of it, and it comes. We be the nature of what is valuable to the entire species at once. Understanding too, that the nature was the nature. More, in other words, other nations too, per the same method, we can organize it, and then we can